that another cheetah has died in the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh within a month's time. Now, a male feline, Uday, translocated from South Africa in the month of February, has died, is what officials have said. Now, the deceased cheetah was 6 years old. The exact cause of the feline's death has not been ascertained yet. Now, one of the 8 Namibian cheetahs, Sasha, aged more than 4.5 years, died of a kidney ailment at the Kuno National Park on March 27th, and 8 Namibian cheetahs, comprising 5 females and 3 males, were brought to the Kuno National Park as a part of the ambitious reintroduction program.
मुझे उस हिसाब से तो चिंता जैसी कोई बात दिखती नहीं है, क्योंकि एक्शन प्लान में भी ये बड़े प्रोमिनेंट तरीके से लिखा गया है कि चीता जैसे एनिमल के जो वो ट्रांसलोकेशन होते हैं, इनमें मॉर्टेलिटी रेट बहुत हाई होता है। तो उसमें कोई ऐसी वो नहीं, बट कोई ऐसा जो सरप्राइज हमको ना मिले, इस कारण से हम लोग थोड़ा सतर्क हैं और सचेत हैं।
तो बाकी अभी उनकी क्या स्थिति है और उनकी मॉनिटरिंग जो चल रही है, लेकिन जिस तरह से आपने बताया कि एक दिन पहले तक स्वस्थ था, फिर अचानक से ऐसे हुआ, तो उसको लेकर कुछ थोड़ा सा आप लोग वो देख रहे हैं कि क्यों, क्या
नहीं, कारण जानना जरूरी है उसका, कि मतलब उसके बाद ही कोई हम कुछ इस पे कमेंट कर पाएंगे कि अब हमें क्या आगे वो करना है। बाकी के सभी जितने भी जानवर हैं, बाकी 18 जानवर, वो सब दुरुस्त हैं, अच्छे हैं, स्वस्थ हैं, नॉर्मल खाना खा रहे हैं, नॉर्मल एक्टिविटी है, शिकार भी कर रहे हैं।
To talk to us more on this, I'm being joined in by Arjun M Swamy, founder and chief scientist of Carnassiais Global. Sir, good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking to us on Mirror Now. You know, talking about the reintroduction program, do you think it's suffering a setback at this point of time? Why would this happen in this particular case? Do you believe they're in chronic stress, suffering months in captivity, or what is your first viewpoint about the same?
First, thank you, Priyanka ji, for having me on here. I think we just need to separate two issues here. One is the larger goal of the reintroduction project and what it seeks to achieve and where we are at. And in that context, actually, we are in really in sort of stage one, because these are cheetahs that have come in from Namibia and South Africa, and most are still in the what we call the hunting bomas. In the sense, they have not been released into the free-ranging state or the wild state yet. Apart from, at the moment, 4 of the Namibian cheetahs were released, and I think one of them had traveled a bit too long near UP border, and it was tranquilized and brought back. And I think they are in the enclosure now. So essentially, we have 3 that are there in the wild at the moment, as we call them, in the free-ranging state. Now, with respect to these mortalities, obviously, as the chief forest official also said, we'll need the post-mortem report for the details. So I'm not going to really talk much about these individual cases, because they will always have something to do with the history. First of all, according to one news report, this particular cheetah, Uday, as we call them now, was already in a quarantine enclosure sometime in July 2022. We need to trace the history of each of these cheetahs, which means 8 months in South Africa, it was already in a quarantine state. And when it came to India, that's another 2 months from then on. So in the sense, a month and 3 weeks in a quarantine state, and then now released into the hunting bomas, which means they're still in enclosures. And some of the project proponents themselves have said that this was a wild-caught cheetah in South Africa, which has now been made to be in a quarantine state or within a fenced-in situation in very small enclosures, whether in quarantine or in hunting bomas, and this induces stress to them. And this is not unique only to cheetahs. This will happen to any large carnivore. If you take them from a wild state and put them into a caged or an enclosed scenario, we do see that they undergo a lot of stress And with stress, anything can happen. But obviously, we'll have to wait for the post-mortem report. And honestly speaking, this is something the veterinarians have to discuss. But talking about the larger aspect of this introduction program, there have been some viewpoints, and I think there has been some confusion about how we view wild cheetahs, how we view wild cheetahs, because in many parks in South Africa, prominently in South Africa, most wildlife are in fenced reserves. So there's a electric fence, a well-made electric fence that covers reserves. Now, in a place like Kuno, this doesn't exist. So when we look at cheetahs, we have to think of them as whether they are free ranging, typically as you would see in East Africa, many places in Namibia, and or whether we talked about fenced in cheetahs, where we put a fence. Now, if Kuno is unfenced, we have to think about it as free ranging cheetahs. And typically, with free ranging cheetahs in Africa, what we have found, partially from some studies I have been involved with, and from what other colleagues have found, cheetahs do occur in very low densities. So we are talking of a maximum of about 1 per 100 square kilometers. And recently there was another commentary by some experts from Namibia who have actually described why this is so. And unlike tigers and lions, which we are kind of used to in India, cheetahs don't
Gopal Swamy, I'd
pack
have to
themselves.
interject you there, but thank you very much for joining us in the broadcast and giving us your viewpoints, and also for drawing things into perspective for our viewers as to what this really means at this point of time. But for the moment, we leave it at that and shift our focus to breaking news that is coming in on the broadcast.